Bitcoin has rallied nearly 10% in the last week, though it was down slightly today. Now, what's behind this rally? The CBOE Bitcoin futures have had a modest decline in Bitcoin short positions, though the more widely traded CME Bitcoin futures have not. Bitcoin has successfully held near 6,000 several times this year, and much of this is likely a technical bounce we're seeing. Now, here's a bit of good news for Bitcoin enthusiasts. More volume, even as Bitcoin prices have plunged in the last couple of months. While trading volumes on the spot markets like Coinbase, for example, have been relatively flat for a few months. About 11,000 Bitcoins a day is typical. Daily futures volumes on the CME have doubled from 15,000 Bitcoin equivalents to about 30,000. That's doubling Bitcoin equivalents in the last 2 months. A rival contract at the CBOE has been relatively flat at about 5,000 Bitcoin equivalents a day. So why is this CME suddenly getting more volume? It's likely more institutions are plugged into the CME now and allowing some form of Bitcoin futures trading. Some may also prefer the settlement method the CME uses. So what's important here is that the increase in futures volume on the CME has occurred while Bitcoin went from 6,000 in June to over 8,000 in July and then all the way back down to about 6,000. It means that at least some traders are perfectly willing to trade Bitcoin futures on the way up and also on the way down. Seems like a more active market out there. Back to you, Melissa.
All right, Bob. Thanks. Bob Pisani at the NYSE. So what exactly is behind this rally? Can the cryptocurrency finally break out? Michael Moro is the CEO of Genesis Global Trading and of Genesis Capital, one of the largest crypto traders on the street. He's got the answers for us, hopefully. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you think Bitcoin has gone above 7,000, currently holding it?
I think the biggest thing in the news that sort of happened last week was that, as you recall, about a week ago, the SEC reject 9 different Bitcoin ETFs. And I think days leading up to the rejection, you saw a rising in the short interest in Bitcoin across the exchanges. And we also saw that increase in lending activity through Genesis Capital, where folks were taking out loans for the purpose of shorting. Once the news broke about the SEC rejection, and the price actually held, we didn't see the 5, 10, 15% sell-off that you've seen in previous rejections, and that the technicals that at right around the 5,800, 5,900 levels held. So I think the bears have realized that they've run out of steam. What we also saw on the spot trading side is right around the 6K level, very few sellers.
All right.
There was nothing left to sell.
So you think we're going to hold 7,000? What brings us to, because your call is the next stop would be 10,000. What brings us to that level? What's that catalyst?
I think the number one thing that's going to happen is slow and steady growth. And as Bob mentioned earlier in just a segment before, is volume. What you need to see is the less violent moves of 5% up, 10% up, and a slow and steady growth across the exchanges. What I also think is important is that I believe the market now understands that the SEC's ETF approval isn't anytime soon. So I think that the market sentiment regarding the product and the approval process is now far more muted, which I think is a healthier outlook for the next 12 months.
Hey, so Michael, let me ask you this. You look at the chart of Bitcoin since the highs in December, we've seen a series of lower highs over the, and so yes, we've held 6,000 numerous times this year. Do you think they're just sellers that live above because when they get back to those prior highs, the hodl thing just doesn't exist anymore in 2018, and therefore that's one of the reasons why we have not been able to make a new high in 2018 from the prior?
What I think is interesting is every single time we get a pop in Bitcoin price, the first thing that happens are sellers. So it's folks who manage to sort of scoop up the dip and are selling at the next pop. And so folks that managed to buy at 6,000, 6,100 in the last 2 weeks were sellers in the last 24 hours. So the question is, are the bulls here to stay? We haven't really seen the strong buy-side demand yet coming in, even though there have been sell-side interest in the last 24 hours. So I think the question ultimately is the market going to head back down to the 6K level simply because the bulls are still waiting to see, is the 7K really going to hold, and then see where we go from here.
What's your feeling, what are you seeing in terms of orders? I mean, are you sensing, you mentioned that in the past 24 hours, short interest has climbed. I mean, if this rally up through 7,000 was fueled by short covering,
yes.
Some might say, well, the shorts are going to come back and reload.
I think that's ultimately the question. Whether the real short game is down from 7 down to 6, sure, there's 15% kind of baked in there, but is that really kind of enough ultimately to kind of get this done? And then the question is, where are the bulls? Are they now on the sidelines, or if the 7K level holds, say for the next week, next 2 weeks, the bulls will 100% be back, where they're more comfortable that the lows for the year are in, and that we are more likely to see 10K rather than 5.
So that's a level, in your view, that Bitcoin has to defend. It's got to defend 7,000 for about the next week in order for you to be convinced that the bull case is there, that the bulls will step back in.
I think the key level is 7150 to be more
7150.
exact. But yes, if we can hold that next week, I do believe that we will see a sentiment turnaround in the marketplace.
All right, Michael, thank you. Great to have you with us. Michael Moro of Genesis.
Well, pretty interesting. Look, no matter what you want to say about efficacy, proof of concept, existential, 6,000 has been a key level, and it's largely held. I mean, give or take. And I think Dan's also been, though, right by saying, look, until you really find a bottom, you don't have a bottom, and we don't know that. Ultimately, I do think what's interesting is Mike said no one was expecting the SEC to come through. Didn't sound like he's expecting them to come through any time, and yet that is the catalyst that everybody needs.
Yeah, so the most important takeaway I have is that we need to get back towards that prior high from July, which is about 8,500. And once they do that, then that's the first time in 2018 we have made a close above a prior high. Okay, and that to me would maybe cause some bulls to get back in rather than shorts to cover.